Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Welcome back. I am so excited to be back this week. Last week was my intention to record this episode for you, but I got really ill with a cold that left me coughing nonstop, and I just didn't feel like my voice was in the place to record. So fingers crossed that we have no coughing mid-episode here. I'm going to use my deep breathing and my mindset to will myself not to cough. But I really want to talk about Christmas, because Christmas, this season, it is a season of joy and magic, and it can be so special, but it can also be completely and utterly exhausting for women. So let's just be really honest here. Christmas for women is basically a marathon of people pleasing, of mental juggling, and endless to-do lists. I'm sure almost anybody listening to this can agree with this, because I know I feel this every year. So this episode is really about us diving into the unspoken reality about this holiday season for women. The mental load that we carry, the pressure that we have to make it magical, and the exhaustion that comes from doing all the things. We really do take on so much here. And I think sometimes we let go of our boundaries and we forget to delegate because we want it to be perfect. And, I once was told by one of my coaches, perfection is a trauma response. And it is so true. So if you're somebody who's trying to perfect December and trying to make it the best December, you might be burning out and running on fumes here. So we're going to talk all about some of the realities around Christmas and what we can do about it as women, because we really can have it all. We can make this a really, festive season for our families, for ourselves, but we can also do it in a way that comes back to nourishing us and not letting ourselves just fall along the wayside. This is really about reclaiming the season for ourselves as well. So, one really big thing I want to talk about. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff here, but let's dive in first to the history of Christmas or the holiday season. I think, every year it feels like this holiday gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was thinking about this the other day about my own Christmases as a child. And yes, it was busy. And yes, we ran a lot of places and did a lot of things. But I don't remember my parents doing 3/4 of the crap that I'm doing now. And so it feels like, I think a part of it is because this is such a season that's so commercialized. We really do consume a lot here, not just present-wise, but food-wise, energy-wise. This is a big season. And this is so driven by advertising and by, even the sales that happen. We overspend during this season because we wait for the Black Friday sales, we wait for the Boxing Day sales, and then we stockpile on the things that we need. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But let me tell you, for Black Friday, I got up in the morning and then I hit the website trying to buy all the things that I needed to buy and things that I really wanted to buy during the year, but I didn't because I was waiting for a bigger sale. Even for things for my own menstrual health. I bought the temp drop and I bought the Mira device, and there was so much going on. And I think that so many women feel this because we are always trying to optimize. And so I don't think Christmas was always this way. At least I don't remember it being this way as a child. Maybe I just had my blinders on. But I was in a conversation with the women in the cyclical program this week, and I don't even remember how it came up, but I was like, I don't even, at what point in our history did winter solstice, or did we decide that Christmas was a good time for women to be pouring all this energy in, because winter solstice is right before Christmas, December 21st, 22nd. And this is the time of the year where it's the darkest day. Like, this is really like the epitome of our like first day of bleeding, like that darkness before we come back into the light. And so if we're telling women that we are seasons within seasons and that we're cyclical and that we're interacting with all of these different cycles, wouldn't it go to show that December really should be a month for us to rest, to hibernate, to up our self-care? But somewhere along the lines, it's become this rat race where we just go, 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 go. And like I said, I think a lot of this plays into consumerism. But I was curious after I made that claim in that program about solstice. I was like, I wonder what the history is of Christmas. Like, when did it get crazy? And I was actually blown away with a lot of the things that I found. And I'm going to include this article from the History, I want to call it the History Channel, but it's like the History website, which was it was inspiring to read, I think, just because it taught me a lot I didn't really know. So first of all, what we know of Christmas, or what we think of for December, it really does go back to the winter solstice. Like, that's how far it goes back. And so way, 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 hundreds and hundreds of years ago, people celebrated and rejoiced and came together around winter solstice. And they didn't necessarily always come together, but it was this idea that they celebrated the idea of winter solstice being the shortest day of the year, that now the worst of winter was behind them and they could look forward to longer days and extended hours of sunlight. It also meant that you survived the worst of the winter. Like, this was a time when there was a little bit of a celebration. And sometimes, because of this as well, is that it was too expensive to feed cattle or animals around this time of year. So they would slaughter because it was so expensive to keep animals alive. So there was food, there was this kind of celebration of that. We're now into the next phase. Now, this is really celebrated a lot by the pagans. And so as the church and Catholic religion was still on this uprise, they wanted to wipe out the pagans, right? And this is my understanding, okay? So anyone that's super religious or, this is your belief system, this is just what I've learned. This is a new theory, right? So they wanted for them to be just as equally celebrated. So that's how they came into starting to celebrate the idea of the birth of Christ, right? And then from there, in the 1800s, there's a lot of history here, but like to speed it up here a bit, the 1800s is really when Christmas became this thing of like gift giving. And then, there was great authors and poets that were writing these stories around Christmas tales, which just really started to amplify this idea of us making Christmas into this bigger thing. Okay. So traditionally, it really was just a celebration around that we survived the coldest, hardest months. Like, we now have hit the shortest day and we're coming into more light. So I think that's interesting. Does that really change a lot of things? Who knows, right? But when I hear this and I think about how we really have blown it up into being this experience that we've created into being, where there's so many elements that, let's be real, fall on women's shoulders, we really have to start to evaluate, how do I navigate this? Like, how do I take care of myself? Like, what is the holiday 101 in really supporting my hormone health? And so one is to really take this history into consideration, right? Like, this pressure that we put on ourselves to excel, to make it this magical season. Remember, this is all artificially made, right? And so we can at any point axe certain things, or we can really start to amplify certain things, right? And I think we're in this place of constantly trying to amplify. So starting to look at, like, is this my reality? Is this really what I want my family or myself to know of this month? And then I really bring in the solstice stuff because I think this is so incredibly important, that December is winter. December is these dark days. So we have to still honor this cyclical response or this interaction that our physical body is having with the energetics of having less light, having less sunlight, having colder months, of, really being encouraged to stay inside. This is a time where we have lots of illnesses. So like the cold and flu season. So this is the time where we're supposed to like really protect our immune system. So I'm not saying that we have to hibernate, but I am saying like, think about what is going on all around us and how much we are actually pushing against that grain and how that may be playing into our burnout. So my first thing that I really, really want to amplify here is that the reality is that this Christmas mental load is widely disproportionate that affects women, okay? It does not affect men the same way. And that really is because I think we take on a lot of this. I'm not saying that we do it all, but I think sometimes we can get in the habit of taking on a lot or dreaming the dream of making this so incredibly magical that we take on way more. And sometimes we really have to kind of push back and delegate. And we're going to get into that. I also want us to cover about how we can use our menstrual cycle to really plan our holidays to maximize our energy and create ease when ease is needed. And that we really need to get the whole family involved. Like, this is no more mom making this magical. This is really about the whole family and us delegating traditions and tasks. So that way, if we really want to keep these things alive in how we want to celebrate, then it's not just following on one person. And that we get to make new rules. Really, Christmas traditions are just artificial traditions that have been created over time and have expanded and grown and gotten bigger and with increased expectations. At any point, we can create new traditions. And I think that's really, really important for us to remember. So the first thing I want to suggest, this is my first little hormone hack, my Christmas survival guide tips for you. Number one is the first thing I want you to do on this call after this, listening to this podcast, is to grab your calendar, and I want you to mark out with highlighters on your calendar where you are going to be from now all the way until, let's say, January 6th, because if we have children, we have them home for the Christmas holidays right now too, or during that time. So for instance, I always like to use like a pink highlighter, and I think you've probably maybe heard me talk about this before if you've listened to the podcast many times, but I take like a pink highlighter for my bleed days. I take a green highlighter for my inner, or for my follicular or my inner spring. I take a yellow highlighter for ovulation, for inner summer, because it represents the sun. And then I take like a purple or a blue that's going to be for that luteal week, which is like that inner fall, that kind of maybe PMS week that we might think of it as. And so I want you to start to think. So if you're not sure where you're at, look. Hopefully you've been tracking your cycle if you're listening to me. Hopefully you'll have an idea of when your next period is. So even if you know that information of when I should expect my next period, you can reverse action this so that way you can find out which week you're in. So whether it is that you actually know what day you are right now and you highlight accordingly to, like, say if you're in day 10, then it's like, okay, I'm on day 10. I'm at the end of my spring. So let's say in 2 days, I'm going to go into the ovulation, the inner summer. So then I'm going to highlight that one with the yellow. So if you know what day you're on, try to engineer it so that way you just know where you are for the next few weeks. If you don't know where you're at in your cycle, but you do know when your next period is, mark that immediately on your calendar, and right away, the first day of your period that you're expecting, mark 5 days to 7 days in that pink or maybe even orange color. Once you have that marked, I want you to go now backwards from that. So then you're going to go, and so the first day of your period, you're going to go a week before that day, and you're going to mark that as your purple or your blue. And then a week before that one is going to be your ovulation. So you're going to reverse engineer it to be able to figure out where you're going to be at every week. The reason why we want to do this is because when we know where we're going to fall, and I get we're already halfway through December, but we can do this for any holiday. But once we have this mapped out on our calendar, we're going to be able to predict how we're going to feel as we get closer to those holiday days, or how we might be feeling right now if the overwhelm's already started to kick in. So for myself, Today is day 1 of my cycle. I am not worried about Christmas shopping. I am not worried about any of those things on my to-do list. I am really honoring the fact that I get that it is December 13th and I still have presents to buy and things to do. And I'm like, you know what? It will all be all right. I've got plenty of time. I've got time for everything. So really knowing where you're at can be really helpful. The first half of our cycle, so like after our bleed days until let's say 3 or 4 days post ovulation, this is going to be your time where your energy is going to be really high, or it's going to be building at least to get to that height. So this is a great time where we can start to strategize and plan. Our follicular phase, so our inner spring phase, those days after the bleed days, these can be really potent and powerful days for us to begin to plan so that we know how to initiate. But like I said, we might not be in that phase this week or next week. We might be somewhere else in our cycle. So know that that is like the prime week to be able to really plan things out. Our ovulation week, its superpower is that we are social. We actually really enjoy being out and about, getting out of our house, doing the things. This is when hitting the shops is probably going to be really fun for us, and to do the gift wrapping. We can really get into the excitement and the holiday spirit. The week after ovulation, so the week before our period, this can feel like we're starting to get edgy. We're starting to get really grouchy with people. We've got too much to do. We're not getting enough help. Even for myself, last week, my husband and I got into a little tiff, and I was just like, you're not helping enough, right? So if you're starting to feel that rising, this could be exactly what I was experiencing, of just knowing that this was more of a hormonal reaction, but it was also a hormonal reaction layered with the fact that this is a holiday season that impacts women. And, rather than me having a very constructive conversation like I should have had in my ovulation, I got really cranky in my luteal phase of expecting him to understand the impacts when we've never had the conversation. So, lesson learned from me, make sure you have these conversations in your ovulation phase, so that way you're not feeling so much tension and resentment in the holiday season during this week. But if you're there, like I was, then it's about really honoring that I needed more time to myself. So I went to bed super early these days of the week. When I was in my luteal phase, I made sure that, I fed the kids, I did what I needed to, but around 7:30, I clocked out. Like, I just disappeared up to the bedroom. And I let go of the guilt of not doing all the things. So, and really taking time for me, which now, as day 1 has hit my system today, I have so much capacity. Like, I know that I'm bleeding, I'm a little crampy, but my heart feels like it is expanded. Like, I am ready now to dive back in. I'm not going to. I'm going to take my few days. I'm going to listen to, my advice. But after those, I know that I have the capacity to get into that holiday cheer. So this is really important to know for us if we might be in that late luteal phase, that late PMS phase, or our bleed days during December 20th, let's say, to like 28, okay? Because in that crunch period around Christmas, if we are bleeding, if we are coming up to our bleed, we're going to lack energy. We're going to feel super irritated at everybody in our home. We're going to be super irritated by the schedules people have set for us. We're going to be super irritated that we have to do so many things. This is not because you in any way are being irrational or that you're wrong. It's that the pressure cooker of the holiday season is hitting you and hitting you hard because perhaps we haven't planned for it. Perhaps we haven't set the boundaries in place. So this is how, when we know this, we then have lots of tools and resources so that we can actually enjoy the holiday season when we may be in these parts of our phases of our cycle, which is what we're going to dive into. So step 1, figure out the rest of this month, rest of December, maybe first week of January, where you are going to be at each and every week. So that way you know where you have to set better boundaries, where you have to take care of yourself more, or where you may have to rewrite the rules of the holiday season. My second tip is teamwork is really your dream work. So this holiday season, it has fallen on the shoulders of most women. And we like to make things magical. We like for people to have memories. We love this experience. We are, by like hormonal or genetic built to want to feel the feels. Like we are feeling creatures as women, as females. And so we like things to be fun. We like things to be memorable. We like things to be an experience. But this can cost a lot on us at times. And we got to remember we're one person and we're never meant to do it all on our own. We are meant to have communities. Even when you look at the history of Christmas and all that was part of it, it was a community event. It was not a woman's event, right? And so really start to think about where can I delegate so that way these memories can still be made, and let go of the things that don't bring you joy. Delegate the things that don't make you joy. Completely release them if needed. And then use your energy with the things that make you happy. So for an example of this, cookie season. I know we have to make cookies during this time. Like there's cookies that my kids want to give to their friends, and the school needs stuff for their Christmas parties for each classroom, and Christmas dinner when people are snacking or whatever. It's nice to have these things, these homemade baking. I can buy them. I get it. But I knew where I was at in my cycle. I knew that this coming weekend I was going to be bleeding, so that wasn't going to work. I knew the December 20th weekend might be better because I'd be in my inner spring. But I also knew that that was so close to the 24th that I might be running around last minute because I took this week off. So I knew that I might be overstrapped. So in my inner fall, I made cookies with my kids. I made it as we're doing 2 recipes. Let's plan it out. Let's get all the supplies and let's hammer this out in one afternoon. And I knew for myself that yes, I had to call in extra patience. I had to make it fun for the kids. But the best way to do that was knowing that you do have capacity to make things fun and to give to people, even if you are in your luteal phase, your PMS phase. It just means that we get really grouchy or we get really edgy because all we're doing is giving to other people. And so the way that I balance that is I knew I wanted to do this with my kids. I knew it was something that had to get done, and that, we were getting too far into December for any other weekend for it to work. So I decided to go ahead and do it. But I also rested that morning. I took time to read a book for 2 hours in the morning. I had a bath, then we made the cookies. And then the evening was pretty chill. I didn't put expectations on myself to do a whole heck of a lot. I can't remember what we did for supper now. I think I made my husband make supper because I was like, okay, I'm taxed out, right? And so this is how we can balance these things. So I highly recommend, if you're somebody that's going to be bleeding and you haven't done your cookies and you want to do cookies, this is where you call in grandma or the aunts. This is where you're like, hey, why don't you come over and help me do the thing, right? Or can you take the kids and do this with them so they have that Christmas memory? So this is where you can delegate that thing. A big thing in my household, and I am working on this. I did not conquer this one this year, so I'm going to, put my own words right now into practice for next year, is setting boundaries around people buying their own presents for people. And by that, what I mean is somehow I always manage to buy the presents for all the kids, for my husband, for myself. Then my mom, because she doesn't live in the city, she's like, hey, what do you want for your kids? Can you go pick it up? So then I end up buying my mom's presents for the kids. And then my brother, he's always busy. So then it's like, I go and buy the presents for our kids from him. And then I also reach out to my other in-laws, and I'm letting them know what the kids' wish lists are. I essentially buy all the presents for everybody, right? Even if I'm not physically going to the store, I am making sure all the things are done. And so know that you can just let this go. Really make people buy their own presents. They are very capable of doing it. You can also, my kids are now getting a little bit older, that they can now write their own lists, and I can give them to that. My husband can take pictures of those and send them to people. This is where we can get creative with how we want to delegate, right? But I give you permission to say, you know what? I'm not sending out, or I'm not buying all the presents for everybody. People can do this. I know that there's One colleague of mine, she only buys for her family, and then it's up to her husband to buy for his family. And she's like, I always feel bad for them every year because of the things that they get, because he's waited to the last minute and he has no ideas and put no thought into it. But she was like, I always say, he's your son, right? Like, so, this is where we can just let go of it. And remembering too that, presence really in its essence is us saying, I thought of this person and I wanted to get them something. We have blown it up into that it has to be these big, extravagant, so many different things. To be honest, in our household, we now only buy for the kids. Our kids want to buy something for us. So my husband and I will do that with them, of buying something small for each of us from the kids, but we don't buy for adults. I don't buy for any of the uncles or the aunts. I do buy something for my mom, really small, but I really try to keep it simple. The presents are really about the kids. And for me, the adults, it's about us getting together and spending time. That is the gift. That's all I want. So I'm forcing that upon them too. And over the years, I've really set the boundary of like, can we not do presents for adults? Can we let that go and just like eat and have fun together? So know that you can do this as well. Now, when we're talking about teamwork too, this is where you can divvy up some of those also daily tasks through the month of December. And what I mean by that, elf on the shelf. I do not do elf on the shelf at all. I make my husband do it. And I don't fix it when he screws it up, when he forgets to move it. And, every year there's usually one day where he forgets and he has to make up a story, and then he doesn't forget for the rest of the season. I'm also completely okay with just completely letting go of that tradition, to be honest. But we keep it going for now, for a little bit. But these are the little things, is that you ask yourself what is really, really important, and what traditions can we just either let go of, or can I say that's your responsibility, not just mine. The next one is that we can start to reinvent traditions. So the best memories aren't always about us having the big, huge meals or the perfect decor. This is really about us starting to think about where we are in our cycle. So how much capacity do we actually have to give? And what matters most to us and to our intimate family, for the people that are living in your home, right? And know that if something means something to your extended family, that's their stuff, right? And if they have big feelings around it, that's once again for them. That's not yours to take on. And so what I'm meaning by this is, there was a year during COVID where we couldn't get together as family. And my husband and I, we literally stayed in our pajamas all day. Our kids were quite young. And when it came to supper, I was like, do you want to make something? He's like, no. And I'm like, I don't want to make anything. And so we had enough snacks through the day that both him and I weren't super hungry. And we knew that there was leftovers that we could kind of put something together if we needed to. So we just asked the kids what they wanted. And my one child wanted a peanut butter and jam sandwich, and the other two wanted macaroni and cheese. And so literally that was our dinner. It took me like 10 minutes to whip it up. And it was like, here you go. Here's some vegetables to balance it out a little bit and a glass of water. But then we all went back to playing board games, watching Christmas movies, and just chilling out together. And I remember this so clearly because every year, and I'm pretty lucky because I always host, but I don't do the cooking. I have lots of family members that are people who adore and get so excited about cooking the meals that I'm just like, whatever, you can use my kitchen. We can host, but I'm not making anything. And so I'm pretty lucky that way. But I see my mom stressed out, or I see my in-laws stressed out. And I'm just like, this could be so much simpler. Like, realistically, I don't need 16-pound turkey. Like, I don't need 5 different salads. Let's just keep it simple. Let's just simplify. And so know that you can reinvent traditions at any point and really make them for your own, and do what feels best for you. It wasn't Christmas. It was Thanksgiving one year. I completely called my mom and I was like, I'm going to be on my period and I don't want to travel, and I don't want to have to be babysitting a lot of kids and being around a lot of family. Can we just reschedule for a few weeks from now? And she was like, yeah, sure. Like, she totally got it. She totally got the exhaustion of what it was going to be like for me. And we just rescheduled it. And it made no difference. So I guess that's my next point, is that to remember this is just a day. So you can celebrate Christmas on December 19th. You can celebrate Christmas on December 28th. So if you are somebody who struggles with painful periods, or maybe you have endometriosis and this really like just takes you down your period, just make it a different day. You know, it's not going to take away any of the magic. It's not going to change the event. It's really just asking people to celebrate on a different day. And we can do that. We can adjust and we can make it what it needs to be. And if they don't get that, we don't have to go either. Or I always tell my clients that they have full permission to show up just for the meal and then go home after the meal if they need to, right? Like we need to open up the communication about what we're experiencing, what we're going through, and just really be honest with people. I'm on my period. I can't stay out late tonight. I'm sorry. Thank you for the dinner. Thank you for the short time we were here, but we gotta run, right? And then, you know, my last point is that adjust expectations. If you're starting to feel burnt out, if this is starting to feel too much, just let things go. Skip traditions, simplify things, make it a potluck, make it one salad, not 5 salads. But really start to think about, how can I protect my energy and really honor my body and where it's at. We can have Christmas, we can have a magical holiday season without compromising ourselves. So to really summarize it really quickly, it's just a holiday. We can have it on any day. Make your own new traditions, or make your traditions for if you're bleeding this Christmas, like make your adjustments as needed. Delegate, and know where you are in your body, so that way you know how you're going to feel, so that you can set the proper boundaries and you can really honor your energy and what you need. So I hope this helps, because I know this season can be really overwhelming. And I just, this year I have really worked hard of trying to simplify my Christmas a lot more and make it simpler. And to really go with the flow, like literally the flow, my body's flow, this December. And so far it's been good, you know, and I'm really letting go of so many expectations for Christmas, because I have so many people here, but I'm lucky. I'm going to be in ovulation during Christmas. So I will be more social. I will be able to handle a little bit more stress, which is exciting to know and to be able to celebrate. But I also want anybody who's not going to be ovulating at Christmas to know that I see you. I feel what you're going through, and let me be your anchor to fully give you permission that what was last year, what was for the past 10 years, what is maybe going to be next year does not have to be this year. I want you to take care of you and know that taking care of you does mean that it's still going to be a magical holiday season. So I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And happy holidays, everyone. I hope you enjoy and that you really do some, I have a teacher that always calls it the restmas. I really want you to restmas this year. So make sure that you have a little bit of holiday cheer layered with a lot of rest and nervous system healing, regulating practices in place. So, have a great holiday season. The next few weeks, I may get an episode out, but you know what? Once again, I'm just kind of going with the season here. It's a busy time of year. I don't have anything pre-recorded. I always have ideas of things to record, but we'll see where my energy level is. Otherwise, you might not be hearing from me until the first week of January. But we'll see where it goes. I'll probably do a check-in at some point over the next 2 to 3 weeks, but there's a good chance that I might just say, you know what, let's call it a wrap for 2024 and bring some new, fresh ideas, thoughts, podcasts in January. So if you don't hear from me, know that I'll be thinking of each and every one of you, and that I really want, as women, for us to redefine this holiday season. Let's become part of that history channel of how we decided that Christmas was just too crazy, and that as women, as a community of women, we have now rewrote Christmas, and this is the new Christmas for the modern woman.
Are you excited about aligning to your cycle? If so, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and like the episode if it really resonated with you. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.